Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out this white, black and red or Mardu colored token aggro deck featuring the new Zurgo Stormrender, which was just made available as a craftable commander, and this was voted on by my supporters on Patreon. So Zurgo is a 3-mana 3/3, has a mobilize 1, meaning if it attacks we get to make a tapped and attacking 1/1 warrior token that we have to sacrifice in our end step, and then whenever a creature token we control leaves the battlefield, we get to draw a card if it was attacking, otherwise each opponent loses 1 life. So there's actually quite a lot to parse here. Let's say Zurgo attacks, we get our mobilize token and the opponent just takes the damage, then the token only gets sacrificed in our end step, so at that point it's no longer considered attacking, so we just drain the opponent for 1. Not quite as exciting as getting to draw a card, so instead if our opponent were to block the 1/1 token, at least we'll get to draw a card on the way out, or if we have maybe some sort of sacrifice outlet on the battlefield, we can attack, maybe even deal damage with the mobilize token, and then before we move to the second main phase, while the token is still considered to be attacking, we can sacrifice it at instant speed, drawing as many cards as possible with Zurgo's ability. So that's just one of the many cool play patterns that you have access to in this deck. Decks that tend to sacrifice a lot of creatures, often referred to as aristocrat style decks, also tend to have a lot of intricate play patterns since you've got so many options when it comes to sacrificing all of your creatures in various ways, so they do tend to be quite finicky as well. So then taking a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, and as you'll notice we only have a very small ramp section, and that's mostly because all of the key cards in this deck tend to cost 3 mana, which is not ideal when your commander also costs 3 mana, but that's just part of the experience with this token deck, since so many of the good token makers cost 3 mana. So then ramping on turn 2 to ramp out your 3-drops is not all that helpful, so that's why we don't see many ramp cards. Then we do get access to some very good interaction, since the Mardu colors have access to the best removal in the game. And then we've got the token makers, which is by far the largest section in this deck, and then we're mainly focusing on creatures that can generate tokens turn after turn, since those will have the most synergy throughout. And then we've got our sacrifice outlets. These are often creatures that can sacrifice other creatures at any point for free. At least now we've got some good quality ones that have been added to Arena over time. So that's a way for us to sacrifice those attacking tokens at instant speed while they're still considered to be attacking. So we get to draw as many cards as possible off Zurgo. Then we've got some white creatures that can protect other creatures throughout the deck, and these are pretty important for keeping our commander alive. Then we've got a couple haste enablers, since all the mobilized creatures in the deck of course will heavily benefit from having haste, so they can attack and make those tokens right away. And then finally we've got our finishers, which include a lot of enchantments that can maybe deal damage when our creatures enter the battlefield, as well as other cards that can maybe drain the opponent to death when our creatures die. So we've got a little bit of both happening here, and then some other powerful 5-mana cards like Elspeth doubling our tokens, or Divine Visitation turning all our 1/1 creatures into 4/4 angels, which also applies to all the mobilized cards. So yeah, that's our deck in a nutshell. As you can see, it's not quite as streamlined as some of my other decks, and that's because we have so many themes throughout the deck with the tokens, the sacrifice synergies, and other cards you want to include in an aggro deck. So there's a lot going on here. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana acceleration, one card we do actively want is Chrome Mox, since that's a way to play Zurgo on turn 2 already. Dark Ritual doesn't really ramp out Zurgo, but can still be helpful in casting some of our other expensive cards ahead of schedule. And then Ragavan is a little bit ambitious here in the ramp section, but if it can connect, it can technically make treasure tokens, so that's another way to maybe cast our Zurgo on turn 2 already. And then Arcane Signet is always worth including, since there's a lot of other 1-drops we can cast afterwards, helps us double spell in later turns. And then moving on to the removal section, things are pretty exciting with Swords to Plowshares in white, Lightning Bolt in red, black offers Fatal Push and Cut Down as 1-mana instants, and then we've got some discard spells as well with Duress, Inquisition and Thoughtseize to disrupt the opponent's hand, take away answers for our creatures. And then at 2 mana we've got multiple answers that can also hit Planeswalkers for those Planeswalker commanders. Get Lost, Bitter Triumph and Sheoldred's Edict can all take care of them. Edict also pretty effective against all the Cotis decks that have been quite popular as of late. If it's the only creature on the battlefield, we can still get around Indestructible. And then Abrade can also deal with artifacts, so it's also quite flexible. Then we get to the token makers, where we've got a lot of mobilize cards, starting out at 1 mana with the Stadium Headliner, which can also be used as removal if we sacrifice it. Voice of Victory is excellent if we can play it early against blue decks that rely on counter spells, as they won't be able to cast them in our turn. Then I did include a handful of alchemy cards that just came out, since these are also quite thematic, and the deck could certainly use the power boost, the Waystone's Guidance giving attacking tokens 1 extra power, and whenever we cast our first creature spell each turn, that spell gains a mobilize 2, so that can also help generate more tokens. Bitter Blossom makes a 1/1 fairy rogue with flying each turn at the cost of 1 life. Karizev makes an attacking Ragavan if it attacks, so that also synergizes quite well with Zurgo. We've got Frontline Rush, can either make 2 goblin tokens at instant speed, or we can use it as a pump spell that also scales with the number of creatures we control. Sky Knight Vanguard making a soldier token when it attacks, and can usually fly over opposing creatures. And then we get to our 3-drops. As you can see, there's a lot of those. Adeline, of course, very powerful, making 1/1 human tokens, also scales with the number of creatures we control. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is still excellent, and the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki also has amazing synergy with Zurgo Stormrender, so definitely worth including. And then the Shaman also often gets blocked if we attack with it, so that will also draw a card of Zurgo if we have it in play. Then we've got more Goblin token makers with Goblin Rabblemaster, Howl Squad Heavy, and Legion Warboss. These don't even need to be attacking themselves to generate an attacking Goblin token each turn, and then Squee does need to be attacking to make another 1/1 Goblin that's also tapped and attacking, so these all have great synergy throughout. Then the Orbrask's Forge makes a Phyrexian token each turn, which scales with the number of oil counters we get on it. Anim Pakal can also scale very quickly, picking up additional +1 counters, in turn giving us additional gnome tokens. Then the Mardu Thunderkite is another alchemy card, but it's quite on brand as a 2/4 flyer with mobilize 2, and when it enters, creatures we control gain our choice of Menace, Lifelink, or Haste for the rest of the game. Will often just be a 2/4 haste, but occasionally can go for a different keyword. And then a Zurgo Thunder's Decree could of course also be your commander. Then you might approach the deck a little bit differently, since this one will preserve your warrior tokens you get off mobilize, but still very nice to have. And then Underil, Flame of the West, is also quite good if we can equip our legendary creatures with it, as we'll get to make attacking 1/1 spirit tokens each turn. Then we get to our sacrifice outlets with at 1 mana Corrupted Conviction and Village Rites to sack a creature and draw 2. Goblin Bombardment can sack a creature at any point to deal 1 damage to any target. Then we've got some 2-mana creatures with Bartolome and Cartel Aristocrat, which can sacrifice as many creatures as they'd like each turn, whereas Zahur is limited to once per turn, but if we get to max speed can also reward us with additional zombie tokens. Then the Morbid Opportunist doesn't sacrifice anything, but it does reward us for creatures dying, as we'll get to draw a card once each turn, so it can also happen during the opponent's turn potentially. And then the Warren Soul Trader can sack a creature at the cost of 1 life to also make a treasure. The Plunder doesn't sacrifice anything itself, but when creatures die we do get a treasure in return, so also plays very well with our mobilize cards. And then Yawgmoth, our most powerful sack engine, as we can pay a life, sack a creature to put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature and to draw a card in the process. Also has protection from humans, so occasionally can proliferate. Then our protection creatures include a Giver of Runes at 1 mana, as well as Skrelv, which can tap to activate. And then both Selfless Savior and Selfless Spirit can be sacrificed to either give 1 creature indestructible, or the entire team can become indestructible until end of turn. And then we've got our haste enablers, including the new Swisspier's Teachings, which will replace itself, and then the next creature we play will have prowess and haste. Rising of the Day gives all creatures haste, and Legends 1 additional power, and Enduring Courage is also very nice with any token maker, as any creature that enters will get 2 additional power and haste until end of turn. Could also consider playing the various boots to give your creatures haste and other protection. And then we get to the finishers, including Monstrous Rage. We know how powerful it can be from standard. Impact Tremors is similar to Warleader's Call, which also gives a team +1/+1. And then the Sadistic Pilgrim and Bastion of Remembrance can drain the opponent to death when our creatures die. Cathar's Crusade gives our team a whole bunch of +1 counters when more creatures enter the battlefield. And Divine Visitation turns all our tokens into 4/4 angels, so that also applies to our mobilize cards, and those angels will indeed be tapped and attacking as well. Then we've got Elspeth doubling our tokens, or maybe pumping the team, giving them flying. Can also destroy opposing creatures with mana value 3 or greater. And last but not least, All-Out Assault, a nice way to attack multiple times with our creatures. Very good if we've got a board full of creatures that generate tokens when they attack, since those will all get to trigger multiple times, as well as giving the team +1/+1 and Death Touch. And then our mana base has 2 of each basic land, plenty of mana fixing, shock lands and surveil lands that we can also fetch up. And then the utility lands include Sokonzon, making hasty tokens, quite thematic. Arena of Glory can maybe give some of our creatures haste. And then Iganjo can be channeled to use it as removal. And the encampment can also make more attacking warrior tokens, although be sure to activate it before you attack, otherwise you might miss out on those tokens. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw, facing a Lamb, so this is not going to be a good matchup unless we're off to a very explosive start, which Bitter Blossom doesn't really lead to. Just need to find some hand disruption and some removal. Maybe this is good enough. But yeah, it's still going to be an uphill battle. If I get black-white with Delta, I can play Skrelv, but Arena will be tapped. So maybe we just skip Skrelv on 1. Don't expect a ton of removal anyway. Alright, Voice for protection. So can I get... I mean, I still need to get a mountain. Maybe I just need to get the Triome here, so I don't get to surveil. Alright, so now I can play Zahur. Or we could go Skrelv plus Backstreet to protect our commander a bit better. And then Windswept Heath is fine since we can curve up to 5 mana. So Arena's not helpful in giving Zurgo haste, since then we'll end up with too much red mana. Paladin class for more protection from instants, and a Chromox. Pitching Get Lost, okay. To level up Paladin class. So it's Voice of Victory beatdown here. Alright, so we need to get on the board. I guess we just cast Zurgo and hope for the best. And then eventually Elspeth can deal with Lamb, but it might already be too late. Maze Mind Tome is acceptable. So we can block one creature here. Alright, so this turn, if I play Yawgmoth, I can at least sacrifice a token from Zurgo to shrink down the Voice, and then set up Elspeth on the following turn. Seems alright. Also has protection from humans, including the Voice. And then I want to make sure to deal damage. And then in full control, while we're still technically attacking, we can sack our creature. So we also draw Zurgo. And then Fatal Push is not a bad draw. So we're probably going to see Lamb make a Mentor right away. Then we do have Fatal Push to answer it, or Elspeth to minus. So there's Lamb. And an Angelic Gift to give it flying. Alright, fair enough. Hopefully that's it, and there's no more free spells afterwards. A Voice attacks. Could finish off the Voice if we sacrifice Skrelv and block with Yawgmoth. Yeah, I don't feel like there's going to be a ton of removal, although we do see Get Lost, so Skrelv could still be useful. What's my plan next turn? I got a Fatal Push if we want to be efficient, and then maybe I'll draw something else. Yeah, I think I'm still tempted to take out the Voice here. We fall to 8. And the rising of the day. Let's start here. Get a plains. More likely to want a guidance plus Zahur, which we can do. Yeah, I don't think we're giving anything haste, so this seems okay. And then just send in Zurgo, so we have the protection from humans back to block the Mentor. Mentor blocks the token, so I could sack Zahur to finish off the Mentor with the Yawgmoth. Yeah, that seems worthwhile. Okay. Speed up. And then next turn we've got a couple options, including Elspeth. Zoom draws. Yeah, we definitely got lucky that we only had to face one Monastery Mentor, since this deck can easily present multiples at once. Ocelot's not bad either. And as a 2-2 I can't easily take it out with Yawgmoth. Alright, so what can Elspeth do for me here? Make some tokens. Zurgo can still attack. And then we've got Yawgmoth to deal with the Pride. That's one option, or we can go Fable plus Rising. But the haste is not all that useful. I guess we get to attack with the Shaman. I think we prefer Elspeth here. And then maybe I should still play a lane to play around like a Mana Tithe. Sure, we've got enough untapped lanes left. That resolved instantly. So we'll attack. Probably fine to leave Yawgmoth back. Save they block. But then I'm probably shrinking down the Ocelots, and can do so with this token, deal damage, and then we can still, while holding full control, sack the token while it's technically still attacking. Alright, so that's Yawgmoth taking over a game basically. Still have our Corrupted Conviction available as well. And then we'll have to discard to hand size a bunch. No time for Bitter Blossom. Tap lands. Fetch lands are probably too painful. I guess Conviction now costs 2 because of Paladin class, so I wouldn't be casting it. Don't know if I would have wanted to sack the Soldier anyway. Probably want a board presence. There's Lamb once again. But yeah, we can potentially just fly over with Elspeth now. Finally swords Yawgmoth, which has been a thorn in their side. Yeah, that happens. I think we're looking to just burn them out at this point with Impact Tremors. And maybe Hasty Creatures. Alright, so what are our options? If I play Rising, I guess I don't need to use Rising for haste. We can also use the Arena for a hasty Adeline and Anim. And then give the team flying. The tokens won't fly. The ones we generate, but that might still be enough in the air. Yeah, let's go for it. So make sure we use the red mana on Adeline. also gains mobilize. Anim also making use of that mana. Then fly. And then smash. And then Conviction can still sacrifice a token for an extra damage if needed. There is 4 life from the tome, but I think we'll have enough. Yeah, I think we'll be fine. Damage happens. Wow, did not think we had a chance in this matchup, but yeah, maybe not their best draw, and a pretty nice draw with Yawgmoth in the end. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Zurgo, so no matter what, Zurgo is gonna win. This hand is missing a red mana. Probably something we should mulligan. This hand is not perfect, but turn 1 Ragavan, or we can set up a hasty Ragavan through Teachings. I'll try it. Yeah, if we draw an untapped land, I'm maybe more into turn 1 Ragavan, since we can clear a path with a Braid. Let's just play a tap land and pass. Maybe our opponent plays a ramp artifact or some other card that doesn't block Ragavan. And then we can connect. It's going to be a tap land and our opponent passes, okay. So, unless they've got removal here, there's a chance we get to connect. And this is better than dashing, since we get to keep Ragavan in play. Perfect. And Authority is actually pretty nice to cast. Especially in the mirror match. So now their next creature will be tapped, so Ragavan gets to connect once again. They also have the Arena. Ooh, never mind, Accursed Marauder. Pretty nice answer here. Alright, so didn't quite get to live the full Ragavan dream, but still can't complain. So now it's either Karizev will leave up rights or just play my commander, hope it doesn't get removed. I feel like I play it slow, since it's pretty likely for the opponent to have more interaction. And at least this way we get to pull a little bit further ahead with the card draw. And Karizev is still nice to have on the battlefield for Zurgo, and the opponent's got the Reclamation. I guess could have gotten back their creature, but goes for the fetch land, so that's also a combo. But they can still flash it back to maybe get back the Marauder later. And they left up Godless Shrine, so that's ominous. Alright, well, it's time for Zurgo, one way or another. And then we can leave up Village Rights. Could also make a hasty Zurgo through Arena, but I prefer being able to cast a Crusade next turn. So, still gonna play Zurgo before attacking, so we get the benefit from the ability. And we'll see if they left up a removal spell. And we get to attack. Could also sacrifice a Ragavan token here to the Village Rights. And yeah, I may as well. I lose out on 2 damage, but I get to draw an extra card, since now it's an attacking token that gets sacrificed. So that also triggers Zurgo. So they got punished for waiting. Back to the command zone. So now Crusade doesn't look as good with only 1 creature that makes a token, especially if they get back Marauder to take out Karizev. Opponent just plays their own Zurgo. Alright, so what can we do? Probably should Abrade, play a 3-drop. And then, yeah, the other Zurgo might be the play then. Try the Abrade now. Attack. And then now with both Karizev and Zurgo, the Cathar's Crusade looks a lot better. Even though we may have lost our 1-mana Ragavan, we still get the token. Ooh, the One Ring. Well, that's gonna protect him for a turn. But we can still develop our board with the Cathar's Crusade. And pump up our creatures. That seems worthwhile. As opposed to replaying this and maybe running into a board wipe. Yeah, I wonder if I should have reordered the triggers to get the tokens and then Ragavan. So the tokens that stick around would have ended up with more counters. Yeah, I guess that made some amount of sense. And then I'll keep a bolt. So no damage this turn, but we're left with a pretty nice board. Well, opponent did have the sweeper as it turns out, that's very unfortunate. But at least we didn't commit another creature to the board. And we can get back on the board with a Howl Squad, or a hasty Zurgo through Arena. Howl Squad I can play alongside Bastion, so that feels a little bit more efficient to me. And then next turn I can still play hasty Zurgo with the Arena. Sure, but I'll still keep a bolt regardless. So our opponent's probably going to need another sweeper here to survive. And with the Reclamation back, the Marauder, we've got a token we can sacrifice. So they might have to go digging with the One Ring. Caretaker's Talent is acceptable. So what's the worst case scenario here for 3 mana? It's not like we're gonna run into a Settle the Wreckage. So I guess it's just like 2 spot removal spells taking care of Heavy and Zurgo. But still gotta try with haste. Since that'll also trigger the Cathar's Crusade at the very least. And go to attackers. So far so good. Maybe a Teferi's Protection can save them. Yeah, that's actually what they have. Wow. So I'll keep the Lightning Bolt. So now if they also have another sweeper, we lose our entire board, but should still attack just so we get the extra tokens and +1 counters. So that's now One Ring and Teferi's Protection to stay alive. Yeah, this could be rough. And now the Arena is exerted, so I can give Zurgo haste once again. And the life drain also doesn't get them. At least if they cast a sweeper, there's tokens dying with Zurgo and there's Bastion. So we might be able to burn them out with a Lightning Bolt. Unless that sweeper exiles our stuff, then we don't get any triggers. Okay, it is a Day of Judgment, so triggers galore. Opponent's at 2, so they would die to their own One Ring, but we also have a Bolt. And our opponent's gonna throw in the towel. Alright, still an interesting game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing our good friend Mythweaver. Well, at least we've got a decent hand. Can maybe surveil if we don't need to Fatal Push, and Otherwise, I guess, let's see, I cannot get black-red, so I'd have to get another black-white land, but that's maybe still okay. But if they don't have a mana elf, then I could maybe fetch a tap Triome or a Surveil land. Now, I mean, I guess, that being said, I could still get a Surveil land, since it's not like I'm in a hurry to Fatal Push their 1-drop, since I don't necessarily want a frontline rush on 2. I guess I could just make a pair of 1/1s, just feels a bit underwhelming. Might just discard it to the Fable. So let's Surveil. And then Triome I don't really want, even though I wouldn't mind an extra land. Now Voice of Victory is a bit more impactful. Question is if it's better than just pushing the halfling. I think we still deal with a halfling. Just because I want to guarantee Fable on 3, and if we wait another turn, they get to pull ahead. The sooner we play Fable, the better. Our opponent didn't have any 2-mana ramp, but they'll probably have something on 3. Alright, Lotus Cobra, maybe with the fetch land now. Just a basic. And Cycle Migration Path, so they must have more expensive ramp cards in hand. So I think Frontline Rush can go. Voice of Victory may also be a little underwhelming, although I could cast it alongside a 3-drop after making a treasure. Or I could ditch the War Boss, since Thunderkite is probably better and this doesn't attack into Mythweaver all that well. Alright, Sheoldred's Edict now also a great option. So play Zurgo, attack, I'm happy if we trade. If not, I can still Edict the Cobra. It's probably for the best, as opposed to playing a Voice of Victory. Since, yeah, next turn I can just give the Voice haste with the Thunderkite. So then we get to attack with it regardless. Alright. And then Reflection of Kiki-Jiki is also very exciting with the Thunderkite, being able to give our creatures various keywords. But had a Provisioner with a fetch lane, so that's +2 treasures. So next turn we're gonna see Mythweaver. A Braid can deal with the Provisioner. So I guess if I play Thunderkite, I can activate Reflection thanks to the haste. That's pretty neat. Make another copy of Thunderkite, and then with the treasure we'll get from the token. Now we go for Menace. I can finish off the Provisioner. Alright, that was a pretty cool sequence. And now Menace is excellent for getting past Mythweaver. A bunch of tokens die, triggering Zurgo in the process. And our opponent falls to 2. Alright, let's see if they can find a way out. They cannot, and there we have it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Tsagan, the Battle of the Mardu Commanders. Our hand is keepable. Maybe missing some action on turn 2. Let's have a look. And our opponent's got a lot of similar cards. So with Chromox they can cast a 2-drop on turn 1. Warleader's Call, also good with Karizev. I guess we just take their only creature, and then their anthems aren't quite as backbreaking. they could still go turn 1 Flowering, turn 2 Tsagan. They found a Gold Hound. And they're gonna Crow Mox. Okay, so next turn they can play Tsagan and then immediately get their speed up. So that's pretty good actually. Yeah, the goal is to get Zurgo in play, maybe be able to double block and then still sack the Savior. But this has 4 toughness, so I'll need to get the Warleader's Call in play first. So that's all gonna take a while to set up. Still gonna play the Savior and pass. Our opponent is going for Warleader's Call first. Maybe afraid of a removal spell. Now Rebel Master is interesting, could play that first. Get an extra token. Next turn they get to increase their speed. But then we'll have some Goblin tokens we can maybe sack to Village Rites. Could also keep the Savior back to block Gold Hounds, make Rebel Master indestructible. It's maybe still reasonable. Since, yeah, we can double block the Menace creature and then still beat the Gold Hounds. Although, yeah, Warleader's Call also a great way to get your engines up. They seem to have another play available. It's a Ruby Collector, so when 3 or more attack, they get to make a Mox Ruby. Okay. Goldhound does attack, so we can make the play I described. Double block, then sacrifice. Alright, so what's next? The tokens are forced to attack. So, with Zurgo at least we'll draw a card with it, or 2 cards. Could also Warleader's Call, so 1 token attacks past a Ruby Collector cleanly. And then I can still Village Rites the other one to draw 2, although with Zurgo we would draw a lot more cards here. Kind of like Zurgo. Go to attackers. Luckily, Rebel Master itself doesn't need to attack. Alright, opponent's gonna let damage happen. So in that case, do I still Village Rites? I think I do. But we can let damage happen while we're in the post-combat damage step, if you will. And we can Village Rites, which will still count as our creature attacking. So we draw 3 for 1 mana. And that'll give us more options for next turn. With an untapped land now, Cathar's Crusade could be excellent. And Gas Guzzler also plays well with level 4 speed. And Tsagan attacks. So this can activate, giving creatures +1 power. They can activate it twice. So that is a lot of damage. Can I afford to take it? So that would be 5 plus 5 is 15. So this is a lethal attack if I don't block. So then I guess I'll throw Rebel Master in front of the Ruby Collector to trade. And they're gonna pump it on the way out. So how does our next turn look like? Might need to keep the token back to chump Tsagan. At least it's no longer forced to attack now. And Yawgmoth, also an interesting draw. So yeah, I can go Warleader's Call, Skrelv, tap land. And then let's see. If they draw a creature to trigger Warleader's Call, we fall to 4 at least. They get their max speed. And then this would also gain first strike. So then those get pumped. So that would be bad. So then do I want to play Yawgmoth instead? This is a vampire rogue, not a human, so no relevant protection. But I could finish off the gas guzzler with the tokens I get. Then we still need to block Tsagan, and that's going to be a chump block. So yeah, tough position. Running up against it with a timer. I guess we just attack with Zurgo. Can still go for Yawgmoth. And then I will lose 2 life here in the process. Could I guess just pass and then finish off the Guzzler. And then Summits should be an okay draw. Lets me play Crusade and Skrelv. Although never mind, I don't have triple white. So yeah, Summit actually not all that useful, a white source would be better. So yeah, slight miss sequence here since I missed out on a card draw. Opponent's gonna attack. They don't have max speed yet. So now I can at least jump Tsagan, finish off the Gas Guzzler, which feels a bit better. Although now they will get to max speed, I suppose. But the Guzzler cannot sacrifice itself. So unless they drew a trample trick, we should get to untap here. I guess a burn spell could do it too. Alright, we get to untap. A fetch land is pretty scary on this board. So our opponent's at 9 life. So if they have a blank in hand, and I play, let's say, Cathar's Crusade, attack, the token pumps all of my creatures, so then we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That would be a lethal attack. Although Warleader's Call accomplishes the same and still lets me play Zahir as well. So I guess that's slightly better here. So this way we're not necessarily dead if they have removal. Speed up to 2 already. Attack. And then Zahir can sacrifice the attacking token after it's dealt damage as well. And that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Ureni, the new 7-mana dragon. So our opponent's going to be ramping and then playing lots of dragons. We just need to try and go underneath them, which is going to be a challenge. The Visitation, also a good finisher potentially. I'll try it. Can start by surveilling. They do have the elves, so they're off to a good start. I'll get a Theater. Vista can get another plane, so we have double white. Thunderkite's not bad, although we already have lots of 3-drops. Is this a significant improvement? It's definitely better than the Zurgos, I would argue. But I think I still need to find additional interaction or something to fill out the curve. And then Impact Tremors makes sense. Even though Bartolome can set up our Zurgos a little bit better if we're planning to sacrifice the tokens, that is. Yeah, I think I still maybe start with the Tremors. And then we can play Thunder's Decree before we play Stormrender. And try and keep the tokens on the battlefield as opposed to immediately sacrificing them. Opponent explores. And a Rampant Growths. So they're well on their way to casting Ureni, which is not where we want to be. Could also get a second red source for now, since Triome will fix for double white. Next turn we're casting another 3-drop most likely. I guess with Mountain I'm unable to play Bartolome plus Village Rites next turn, but that's unlikely to be my sequence. It's gonna be Sarkhan. Conjures a Shivan Dragon in hand. Okay. So play Stormrender, attack Sarkhan versus Soul Trader, which can make Treasure, which can maybe set up the Visitation a little sooner. Might still be better, since I'm not guaranteed to draw land. Sarkhan's at 1 loyalty. And get to keep the tokens. But we can sacrifice them at any point to get a treasure out of them. So Sarkhan can still plus to discount their dragons. Does that include their commander? Only in hand. Bloomvine's not good enough. Opponent gets another Shivan Dragon. And burn down the house. That's too bad. They will lose their Planeswalker at least. And I can Village Rites the Soul Trader on the way out. End of turn, any point in casting the Frontline Rush. Probably wait for Divine Visitation now. So what does Ureni do when it enters or attacks? Look at the top 8 and put a dragon, at least only one dragon, onto the battlefield. Maybe we still try Zurgo first. Keep up swords, and then next turn Visitation can immediately trigger. Opponent's got the other Sarkhan. And a Feaster, which will discount the creatures in their hand. Alright, so nothing to swords at the moment. A land is useful. So, yeah. Try the Divine Visitation now. Could also go for Underil Equip, which is pretty good too, to be honest. Sets up even more tokens on the following turn, assuming Zurgo survives. But the upside of Visitation is that I can also end of turn Frontline Rush to make a pair of Angels, which is pretty strong. They could double block Zurgo. Then I could Swords one of their creatures, their opponent takes it. Not wanting to lose the Feaster. So we'll pass. And there's Ureni. Can maybe ambush Sarkhan with our Angels as well. Ooh, Glorybringer. That's rough. So now I probably need to Swords the Glorybringer before it takes out Zurgo. Sarkhan still attacking. Alright, at least we know their hand. So this is a good turn for Underil. Equip, and then I can still Frontline Rush. Now if I play Bartolome, I could ensure that I sacrifice the Angel tokens while they're technically still attacking, so I get to draw 2. But I think making a pair of Angels is going to be better, or we can pump Zurgo to finish off Ureni, depending on what's better. And the Impact Tremors triggers are also adding up. So these spirits got upgraded into angels. Those will stick around. This one gets sacrificed end of turn. Alright, I guess our opponent didn't block any of our flyers, so that's 12 damage going through. No need to cast a frontline rush. Can just let damage happen. But yeah, they could have maybe survived an extra turn had they blocked an angel instead. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Omnath, so definitely a mismatch in power level, but we'll give it a shot. Guidance, we won't be able to play turn 2 unless we play Sundown on 1, but then we'll have the Theater to deal with. So then we can Bitter Triumph on 2 and Zurgo on 3. Yeah, we'll try it out. Yawgmoth is pretty good at dealing with mana elves. Opponent surveils. We will do the same. So we've got our late game taken care of. Orbrask's Forge is nice with Yawgmoth as well. But I think I need the Alliance here. A second black source for Yawgmoth goes a long way. We want to get up to 5 mana. Assault is also very good with the Forge since you can trigger it twice. But I don't think I can afford to keep it here. So ideally, they either present a creature for Triumph, or we draw an untapped white source for Guidance. Opponent decides against a Fertilid. Okay, I can play Sundown Pass, although I guess there's no real upside over just keeping a Bitter Triumph alongside Cutdown. Next turn it'll be untapped. So we'll see. 3 mana. I expect to see a ramp card open the way for x equals 1. Okay. Now, Blackleaf Cliffs, I guess, is awkward, since I wouldn't be able to play Zurgo that way. But I probably just go back-to-back Zurgos anyway. Start with Thunder's Decree. And then next turn I could go Cliffs plus maybe Guidance and Cutdown, or play another Zurgo. So no more Mystic Sanctuary in the deck to tutor up. And a Tireless Provisioner is next. Do they have a fetch lands? Just a tapped Triome. Okay, so decent target for Cutdown, and then we can still play the Guidance. And that works. Attacking tokens get 1 extra power. And future creatures will have mobilize 2. So the tokens can pile up pretty quickly. Can use them to good effect with Yawgmoth as well. Although there's Nissa with 3 forests. So that can make a lot of extra mana. 4 mana here, potentially enough to cast Omnath. Although if they tap out for Omnath, I might be able to finish off Nissa with a Bitter Triumph. Okay. 2 elementals, finish off 1 token. Now a Braid also deals with Omnath. Of course, Bitter Triumph could just target Nissa, but if we can attack her, it's even better. So this seems like a pretty clean solution. Could also abrade the land for what it's worth. But adding an Aristocrat to the board is also worthwhile. So yeah, we can finish off Nissa with the pumped tokens. And add an Aristocrat to the board. Which will in turn also mobilize 2. If we had the different Zurgo in play, we could sacrifice the tokens to the Aristocrat after they've dealt damage, but before we go to the second main phase to draw a card. But with the Thunder's Decree, we're happy to keep our tokens around. Opponent fetches for Island. They can still replay Omnath if they'd like. Although we can protect the aristocrat by sacrificing a token. It's going to be a splendid reclamation, and our opponent's got 3 fetch lands to return, so that's pretty good value. But luckily for us, they didn't have a landfall creature left in play, since we managed to deal with them. So all things considered, this game is not going too poorly for us. They do have double blue up, so they could have a counterspell. Would love to resolve an all-out assault with 2 mobilize creatures on the board. But maybe I should just go for Zurgo, and then I can also Bitter Triumph, or I can just play Yawgmoth to mow down the Hedge Maze, which is pretty good as well. Yeah, let's start with Yawgmoth, see if that resolves. It does. And then we can go ahead and attack. Mobilize a bunch. See how they block. Opponent takes it. They're at 1. Is there any way I can burn them out here? Don't think so, but I can finish off the Hedge Maze. Still maybe hit a land drop for turn. I would keep the tokens with Thunder's Decree, but I just want to deny 1 mana. And with our opponent at 1, it shouldn't be too difficult to cross the finish line. Okay, Pilgrim, if we draw lands I can win, since we have the Mox to help cast it. And there's a land. Does this one enter untapped? It does. So then Mox, pitch Bitter Triumph. Play Sadistic Pilgrim. Sack 1 more creature. And that should be game. Alright, so we got to see this Mardu aggro deck in action. Definitely not the most competitive Brawl deck I've played in recent memory, but it's still a fun time, and if you enjoy aggro decks with a bit of a twist, this might be up your alley. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.